Solving Rational and Radical Equations, an Instructional Design Plan. My name is Tricia Krevling, and I am a teacher at Hudson Vo-Tech, as well as a graduate program candidate at Wilmington University. My system of interest are the IM3 classes at Hudson Vo-Tech. We have mixed ability levels and large percentages of African American, Caucasian, and Hispanic students. Hudson Vo-Tech is a Vo-Tech high school in the Newcastle County Vo-Tech High School District. In 2019, only 13.7% of students passed the SAT. We noticed a lot of students have deficits in algebraic manipulation, as well as the inability to solve many of the equations needed for future courses. That lack of algebra results in students not being able to see and make the connections needed in those higher courses. This is my goal analysis diagram. So we want students to be able to demonstrate proficiency with algebraic manipulation by solving multiple step radical and rational equations. The blue boxes are my sub-steps. Okay, so there's going to be 4 parts to get to that goal. Evaluating expressions using order of operations, demonstrating equality and explaining the process when solving rational equations with integer as well as non-integer coefficients, and lastly by demonstrating equality and explaining the process when solving a radical equation. This goal diagram actually was made for a portrait 8.5 by 11 paper, which doesn't quite fit on my landscape presentation here. So the goal diagram will continue on the next slide. The yellow boxes involve the sub-steps. These are the targets I need to hit during each lesson in order to get to those blue steps. The red boxes indicate entry-level skills, which I need to understand that those are prerequisites before I get into the lesson. So I took the data from the course pretest and teacher observations. There's a review period at the beginning of each course, again based on students' ability to figure out where everybody is. And we also have student tests and a final exam. We're finding that many of the students score below 30% on the pretest, even when there's questions on there that were previously taught. Those review periods at the beginning of the year take longer and longer, and those students who struggle are going to have problems with algebraic manipulations. Specifically, we're going to focus on solving 2- and 3-step equations in this lesson, in this ID plan, and we're going to look at the deficits that prevent new learning from happening at the beginning of the year, because students are not seeing the connections to what's needed for IM3, which are the quadratics, the polynomials, and the radical functions. When I analyzed the learners, it gave me a good picture of who these students are. They're heterogeneous classes, and most students do pass the previous courses, but due to block scheduling, half of the students haven't had math for 1 or 1.5 years. Their attitudes are heterogeneous as well, based on previous success. We do promote a growth mindset at Hudson, and individual student surveys will reveal their styles, their learning styles, and their preferences. Retention's a problem, especially for IM3, because each of the units build off each other. And we do have lots of support for the students, everywhere from teachers, paraprofessionals, counselors, all the way up to district level. We use a variety of student environments and as well as grouping. And the instruction is presented in many different ways as well: Smartboard, Document Camera, and Schoology. This is a diagram of my room. It has ample areas in the middle for 30 student desks to be configured in many different ways. It has whiteboards around the room as well, and it also has an area for extra desks that I can use for pullouts. So as I started to design this instructional plan, we started to look at the objectives. And the first thing you want to look at are the lesson essential questions. Students need to know the end result. So by copying the lesson essential question, students can then copy exemplars or examples and create a guided review as they go through the lesson. And then the students then see those connections and they see their progress. We have a variety of assessments, from formative assessments summative assessments, as well as we are responsible for standardized tests like PSAT, SAT, and of course the final exam, which is their post-test. Each lesson has 8 parts. They always start with a hook or an application problem. They have a warm-up, which is formative. In number 3, we're going to review those entry or sub-skills that are needed in order to get into those sub-steps. There's an investigative or collaborative activity, practice with feedback. This is an assignment they can do on their own and submit it for formative grade, a summative assessment, and if necessary, remediation. 4, 5, and 6 are really repetitive because they're going to be repeated for each of the sub-steps. You'll see that on the next page. So across the top, you'll see the steps in the lesson, and each one has an investigative section, a practice with feedback, and an on your own. So this is the 4, 5, and 6 part of that cycle. And you can see that we use a variety of different websites, as well as websites that give feedback to the kids immediately, or ways that the students can get feedback without necessarily asking a teacher. And lastly, a way to submit an assignment and show us that they can demonstrate proficiency. It's not always a worksheet. Sometimes it's creating a book or making a video. The instruction materials are pretty wide and varied as well. We start with the main resource of Core Plus Mathematics program, Course 3, housing everything on Schoology. Teachers can then make their presentations on slides or Google Docs. And they've got all of these resources and more at their fingertips. We do have a subscription to iExcel in the district. All students are versed in using Kami, which is a document notation app, and you can see these others like Khan Academy, YouTube, Desmos, Graspable Math. These are all ways to keep kids engaged and make sure you hit those goals. The assessments are a combination of teacher and district-made tests and quizzes. Usually the teachers make the quizzes, the districts makes the tests. So there's a variety of every type of format, pen, paper, pencil, electronic, traditional, authentic questions, and they're always graded holistically. The district provides a course guide to each teacher with the LEQ and standards, primary resource sections, and vetted activities. We also have a section on Schoology called Teachers Don't Pay Teachers, and this allows teachers across the district to collaborate and put resources in those folders where they'd like to share. So as I reflected on this instructional design plan, I'll know if it's successful because teachers will be able to observe their students both in this current course and the subsequent courses. We'll be able to look at unit test scores as well as the final exam, and the post-test scores we can compare to the pre-test scores. If it's not successful, we'll probably have to reevaluate the needs assessment, go back to the beginning. My overall impression of the instructional design plan is that the systems approach is very, very detailed. It's very thorough. It would really be beneficial to have more people involved to capitalize on experience. And it definitely changed my idea of designing a lesson. I used to think of it just as before, during, and after, and now I realize that the 4 parts are analyze, design, develop, and reflect.